a consistent point of emphasis for me post All-Star break, and even more so an emphasis for the Suns, has been their movement within their sets and actions, and just generally in their possessions in the half court. There's a ton of different ways they can obviously get into it. They have multiple pieces that are going to garner all sorts of attention, regardless of what context the offense they're operating in. And I think one way that they can do so and really pull the strings and tug at the strings of defense's principles and decision making is by getting into a lot of their three-player actions. Now, obviously, the one that comes to mind first when you think about the Suns over the last like 5 or 6 years, especially the last 4 or 5, is Spain pick and roll. And that's one, but that's not the only one that they can get into to, like I said, with three-player actions, to manipulate advantages and keep defenses in situations where they just can't be right, while also optimizing the pieces within their offense. And I want to kind of just dive into one specific, I guess, action that they get into that has multiple counters and allows for them to play in a free-flowing style of read and react. So let's just kind of dive into the film on it. I talked about it a handful of times. It's their wide action series. And a lot of times with what teams are doing, especially the teams like the Clippers and the Lakers, the more physical type of defenses, even the Celtics to an extent, they take away the initial action, make you work through layers of your offense. And it's on you in terms of the players involved, but also your principles. If you have built-in counters to your actions, how can you regenerate tempo and pace and rhythm within your offense, working through the physicality of the defense? This is obviously a struggle in the first game against the Clippers from earlier this week, but in the second game, particularly in these reps that we're going to be looking at here, they were a lot better. So let's just kind of dive into the film of what was going on in their wide action and why I think it's important to their process going forward. All right, so like we talked about, they're getting into their wide action. It's just a wide screen instead of a pin down, kind of seeing the screener's shoulders facing the baseline and the offensive player working upwards towards the half court line, coming off of those screens. Think about that, but coming from the sideline. So the wide action or wide pin, wide screen is just the screener's shoulders facing the direction that the back of the offensive player is facing, going towards that sideline. So we're going to see Yusuf Nurkic setting a wide screen here for Kevin Durant. And like I talked about in the opening, PJ Tucker jumping to top lock that action. More often than not, this is what teams elect to go with. Coverage-wise on the Suns off ball, forcing them to work through layers of their offense. So we see PJ Tucker take that action away. He says, absolutely not. You're not using this screen. So the Suns are going to, like I've talked about, have built-in counters to pressure. It's just a matter of how effectively they flow through that. So we see them do just that here. We see the reject from Kevin Durant, like I mentioned. And this is the fun part to me because they can get into a multitude of things. I talked about Spain pick and roll. A lot of times they can go reject with Kevin Durant, and if flow into Spain, we'll actually see at least one rep with that in this film session. But I also like about it, they can kind of get into just letting Yusuf Nurkic be a connector and playing in movement around him from the middle third of the floor. I think all of those things are important, and we're going to kind of see it flow through here. So you get the pitch from Booker to Nurkic, and now they're going into middle zoom or middle Chicago action. So we got the pitch to Nurkic, and then we got Devin Booker pinching down towards the elbow. You can see Kevin Durant loading up to use the screen. And before he uses it, I want to pay attention to this hesitation here. You'll see why it's effective and important in process later in this film session on the very last possession. Nonetheless, you can see him kind of setting up his defender rather than just running ring around a rosy manner. Sets him up with this slight hesitation right here. Regains a little bit of leverage, and now he's essentially working like a wide receiver to get off of press coverage, using his feet, using his hands even more so, shifting that leverage. Ultimately, he's going to use the screen from Devin Booker, and PJ Tucker's doing an excellent job fighting through here. Ducks under the handoff from Yusuf Nurkic to meet Kevin Durant on the other side. Also had tip to Mason Plumlee for gapping to allow for PJ Tucker to do so. This is all great on great. Great flow, great movement from the offense, but also great defense and screen navigation from PJ. The issue is, though, for our defense, when Kevin Durant is getting the ball, instead of the stagnant touches that obviously he's an all-time great scoring from, bails the defense out when you're going to it too consistently. So seeing Kevin Durant get these dynamic touches and movement, whether it be off screens or off screens that flow into handoffs, off handoffs in the empty corner, all of that fun stuff, it's important in process. And the Suns need to see him in those contexts a whole lot more. And we see a whole lot of that in this film session. Even though it does ultimately get into an isolation with him and PJ Tucker, I think the important part and process is that he's getting to that portion of the offense, but stemming from movement. It just keeps him, makes him a moving target, makes him a lot harder to guard. He's able to navigate to his spot, and he rarely misses from that left block spot, especially when he's able to get there navigating on his own with the live dribble. Next rep again, more the same. You see a wide screen coming from Yusuf Nurkic. Obviously, you see it again, top blocks from PJ Tucker. Kevin Durant rejects that. And now, like I talked about in the first rep, they have a lot of options that they can flow through in this action. And it keeps defenses honest because there's a level of unpredictability based off of the multitude of read and react counters that the Suns have that they can flow through. There's a bevy of them, and we see a different one here. The same context, different play. It's going to flow in a Spain pick and roll, and we're going to see Kevin Durant as the screener. It's something I talked about earlier this season. We don't see it often. I don't know if they'll go to it as much as they potentially could just because of the different pieces that they have that work better as movement screeners than Kevin Durant does, especially at this point in his career. So having him in catch and shoot context spaced into the deep corner like you see in the top right corner of the screen with Royce O'Neal is a little bit more effective for him. And they can have players like obviously Eric Gordon, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen working as that bottom screener as they most often do, and then working upwards on the pop from there. But we see Kevin Durant, by way of rejecting the screen and zoom action or rejecting a wide screen action here, flowing to it. Get into another three-player action here now. And look at the understanding of leverage. So Kevin Durant, I talked about him being top locked here from PJ Tucker. Reasons why he's rejecting this screen in the first place. So he rejects and then he respaces. As he respaces, Kevin Durant is going to be looking at the ball. He's going to be seeing Devin Booker obviously use the initial screen from Yusuf Nurkic. Good job from Nurkic sliding in just enough to the legal limit to not make this a moving screen. These are the little things in the advantage creation that don't get enough attention from him. If you follow me, you've seen me speak ad nauseum regarding his advantage creation. And we see him do just enough on the brush to allow Devin Booker to turn the corner without being deterred by Terrence Mann. This is good screen navigation, just enough of a screen, and good pace from Devin Booker in pick and roll. Springs him free to get downhill. Now, we talked about, again, Kevin Durant being top locked. PJ Tucker's playing him to the high side, trying to make his movement into action as tough as can possibly be. The issue here, however, is in addition to Mason Plumlee being above Kevin Durant's screen, obviously in Spain pick and roll, he would be setting his back screen on Plumlee. Durant's able to take two with one here. Takes the leverage being conceded by PJ Tucker, flips it into an advantage, but also makes sure to push PJ Tucker enough into the momentum of Mason Plumlee to take away his opportunity in rim protection. And now we go back to Devin Booker being able to get downhill, and by virtue of the spacing in Spain pick and roll, you got three players in the middle third of the floor in stack positioning, and you got two players spaced to the deep corners. Both of the wings are wide open. As Devin Booker turns the corner, there's absolutely nothing but a runway for him to flow down, and he does what he does here. Again, all in just read and react, them playing off of what's being conceded by the pressure from a defense rather than struggling and fighting through it and making their defense, or making their offense rather, stagnate in process. We see them just taking the things that are being conceded, flipping them into advantages. Uncontested, Devin Booker dunked there in the half court. And now we see a little bit of a different style of pace here. Now we got Bradley Beal initiating the offense. Got Kevin Durant again rejecting a wide screen. You get the reject. PJ Tucker obviously top locking again. And as we let this one kind of flow through slowly, just kind of pay attention to how Mason Plumlee is reacting to action after the reps that we saw earlier. Instead of him just kind of standing around the free throw line, he's trying to make sure that he's obviously chucking to help PJ Tucker, but also make sure that he's not tucked too far ahead of Kevin Durant. Now we see the pitch to Nurkic, and this part is important because if Nurkic doesn't get this touch, Mason Plumlee is going to sit around the free throw line area. But because Nurkic now has the ball, that prompts Mason Plumlee to now have to step up and close some of that airspace a little bit. But as by virtue of that, as he's doing that, we get the pitch from Bradley Beal to Nurkic, and now he's playing in get or hand back action here, allowing for him to work with pace and more speed getting downhill. We get the flip back. Again, a great screen from Yusuf Nurkic. Now we got Kevin Durant using an exit screen now. So remember, we talked about them being able to get in Spain pick and roll. We talked about them being able to get into Chicago action and screen into a handoff from the middle third of the floor. Now we see yet another option here in this action. Royce O'Neal is going to set an exit screen here for Kevin Durant. And look at how that occupies all the attention of the backside help. That's creating a one-on-one with Bradley Beal going downhill with the runway by virtue of the spacing of the action, with the wings being emptied, going directly at Mason Plumlee with zero help to have to worry about in terms of hands. This is A-plus process from the Suns. Great flow into it as well. And Bradley Beal does what he does. Blow by into a layup. Just great process from the Suns. And then here we see again, this time different personnel defensively. Nonetheless, we see another reject from Kevin Durant. And we're going to see Devin Booker again pitch it to Jusuf Nurkic. That's going to engage Mason Plumlee even the slightest bit. Now they're going to be getting into some more of their Chicago action from the middle third of the floor. And just kind of pay attention to what's going on here. Oh, wait, this is the important part here. You start showing teams that you're getting into a specific action so often, and this is what I was talking about earlier in the film session and looking at Kevin Durant's movement patterns. This slight hesitation here allows for him to regain leverage and then ultimately makes him able to dictate. This is literally no different than a wide receiver working off a press release. You show a specific release one time after another. Defense starts to anticipate based off of movement and rhythm and cadence. And now you bring out the big joker in your back pocket. And this is like a split release. And look at the separation and freedom that he gets. No push off really. This is just him just taking advantage. Counter to the pressure, wide open backdoor. And again, because Jusuf Nurkic has the ball as Devin Booker pitches it to him, like I talked about, that engages Mason Plumlee, who's also anticipating the action to try to get up to the level of the handoff to take away Kevin Durant's ability to turn that corner. Now that means the paint is literally wide open. Only person in the paint for this bucket ultimately is going to be Kevin Durant. Easy too. Great pass from Nurkic. And then here on this rep, again, more rejects. So we see Nurkic flowing in to set the screen for Kevin Durant early in the offense. He rejects that. And now they're going to get into high splits. So we see this is the important part here. So I love this part of it because there's so much unpredictability. After this pitch to Jusuf Nurkic, Devin Booker can set a down screen for Kevin Durant. He can flow off of the handoff, or he can flow off of the pitch and follow his pass from Nurkic, or to Nurkic rather, and flow into get action, hand back action, if you will. Or he can go and use this screen, this up screen here from Kevin Durant, and just kind of toggle the defensive matchups, all again with great flow, great rhythm, great tempo. And these are just little things within the Suns process, buttons that they can press a whole lot more. We're starting to see them get into it more. And just kind of look at how the unpredictability plays into the Suns' favor in this context on this rep. So you see Devin Booker acting again as if he's getting ready to set a screen for Kevin Durant to flow off of Chicago from the middle third of the floor here. That ultimately creates just enough of a pocket of space for him to take the leverage and get into the handoff. And this is the fun part of this rep here for me, because we talked about the multiple counters that they have in it, just playing and read and react. Devin Booker's thinking about taking this jump shot because his matchup is dunking under the screen initially. Elects not to because it's so early in the clock. They're trying to take a little bit more time off of the clock with this being late in the game and they having a lead. Nonetheless, watch him kind of flip this and watch how the Suns just kind of react to what's going on the floor. Ultimately, it's going to end up flowing into a double screen happening in the mid-range. And then look at the reaction that this is going to get. So we get a great screen here from Jusuf Nurkic. And then watch Kevin Durant as Devin Booker gets ready to come off of his screen. Look at the well-timed slip, the sleight of hand, and look at how all of this in flowing and rhythm ultimately leads to Kevin Durant getting a wide open opportunity, and he's going to knock that down. And then I'm going to run this one back at full speed just so you can see just how effective it is and how the unpredictability in it all ultimately flips into an advantage for the Suns. This is the button that they can consistently press. I'm expecting them to do that even more so and just consistently keep themselves in these positions with three-player actions to dictate to a defense, keep them in situations where they can't be right, and keep the offense flowing.